Sandy, thank you for talking to me. Before I ask you about that evening of the 24th of June 1978 and that parade, what was your involvement in activism?
In terms of gay activism, not involved. In terms of other activism, yes, I was involved in the Lesbian feminist collective, and we used to meet regularly at Women's House in Regent Street in Chippendale. I was also involved in socialist feminist politics, and prior to that I was involved in some of the anti-Vietnam moratoriums, and I was also involved in the Springbok demonstrations back in, I think it was about 72 or 3, very early in the piece. So, and then in 1978 I was actually the women's officer when I was at uni, and so I was involved in student politics, and earlier on I'd been involved in student politics. You know, I'd come back to uni in 1978, but I'd been involved in student politics before then, so yeah.
Were you familiar with groups such as Camp New South Wales?
Yes, I was. I used to live in Glebe Point Road, and actually not very far from where camp office was, and I used to look in there and I wonder what those people are doing. What are those people up to? Yeah, but I was never quite game to walk inside. Yeah, so I used to walk by quite often and wonder. Yeah, I should have gone in.
What stopped you?
Whoa, that's a big question. What stopped me? I think I've got sort of a few nerves in my tummy at that time, and I thought I couldn't possibly go in there. I wonder what's in there, you know, maybe they'll get after me or go after me or something. I don't know what I thought. But I was actually out at that stage. I was out in the workforce back in, 73 or something. I think camp was there in Glebe Point Road. I was 72. Yeah, I was living in Glebe Point Road, and it was probably only a few hundred metres from where camp office was. Yeah, so it was a regular walker by, but never entered in. Yeah.
And on the 24th of June 1978, I think there were 3 main events. There was a march in the morning, if I'm right, a meeting at Paddington Town Hall in the afternoon, and then there was the parade in the evening.
Yeah.
How did you get involved in that day of events?
Oh, basically through sort of uni contacts, knew what was on, saw posters around, and so therefore thought, yes, that's me, I'm involved. And also because I had a bit of a posse of women at that stage that we sort of used to hang around with, and so we thought, right, okay, it's time to go and show our faces and put ourselves out there. And that's exactly what I did. But that particular night I just went with one friend, and didn't really meet up with other people because I don't know where they were, but they ended up being there because some of them ended up in the cell with me. So I saw them at the cell time up at Darlinghurst Police Station. Yes.
And that was on that evening, wasn't it?
That was on in the evening, yeah. And the morning I think I'd gone along. In the afternoon I don't think I went. I can't recall, to be the truth.
So you went on the morning march?
We went on the morning march, and then nothing was going on much there. You know, we weren't harassed or anything at all. And then I thought, okay, this will be a bit of fun to go out in the evening. And so I'd arranged to organise and meet up with a friend that evening. She already lived in Darlinghurst, so I just said, I'll meet you up at Darlinghurst. And so we just met up at Taylor Square there, near the court. And when the march, it wasn't a march, it was...
A parade?
It was fun.
A carnival?
It was a bit like a carnival. Initially, it was fun. Yeah, it was very sort of light, buoyant, vibrant, a lot of really good energy, I thought. And, you know, by today's standards, it was... It was quite like, there were two songs came out of the music. Oh, Sing If You're Glad to Be Gay, and Ode to a Gym Teacher, Meg Christian. You know, I used to love that. I used to know all the words, every single bit. So, and, you know, Sing If You're Glad to Be Gay.
By Tom Robinson.
Yeah. See, people used to love singing that song too. So I love the music, even though by today's standards it wasn't music. But yeah, so we're just sort of following the truck along, and I really was quite interested in trying to get people out of the bars. I personally didn't go into the bar, but I was very heavily chanting, out of the bars and into the streets, out of the bars and into the streets. And it was good to see the people actually coming out of the bars. Not everyone, and I don't even know how many people came out of the bars, but they were coming out. And I thought, well, this is interesting. What are their politics? And do they have an interest in sort of joining up with us? And they're thinking they're going to have a fun time like we were.
At the beginning of the parade in Taylor Square, what sort of numbers do you think there were?
The numbers weren't large. I mean, I know what the material says. I mean, it says there are around 500 people, and there was probably, that or thereabouts. But the numbers did swell as we continued down Oxford Street, because there were many bars in Oxford Street during 1978. There were a number of them there. So, all male bars, of course. But we did manage to pick up a number.
Why was the 24th of June chosen?
The 24th of June, that was the actual anniversary. That was the anniversary of the Stonewall, 9th year anniversary of the Stonewall riot in Greenwich Village in New York. And it was winter. Yeah, it was well and truly winter. It was, it was a crisp winter's evening. And I was dressed in pretty ordinary standard clothes at the time, which were jeans. So it was the other day they said, "Sandy, did you see those flares? Did you see those flares? That was so huge." And my leather jacket was my standard uniform, and so of course I had that on that evening. But it was quite cool. But because it was such a fun time, a lot of sort of heat and energy sort of generated. So I thought, it doesn't matter how cold it gets, we're going to have fun tonight.
And when you started in Taylor Square, was it a wonderful atmosphere?
Oh, yeah, it was fabulous. Well, I thought it was fabulous. I remember thinking, oh, this is one of the best times I've had for a while. And I particularly thought that the music actually even helped, even though it was pretty poor quality, had a pretty lousy sort of sound system. And yes, that was the float. The only float was the white truck,
And who was driving that truck?
Lance Garland, yeah.
So you went down Oxford Street towards Hyde Park.
Yeah.
How you said more people joined. Would you say it was double the number or less than?
I doubt whether it was double, but maybe it might have doubled.
And then you went to Hyde Park.
And then it turned. Once it turned at Wentworth Square there and turned right into College Street. Then it began to actually sort of have a bit of a different atmosphere, which wasn't that same buoyancy that was happening down Oxford Street. And when we got sort of midpoint along College Street there, and it was almost immediately outside where the old police headquarters used to be, where we stopped, maybe sort of a bit closer to Sydney Grammar. So it was just between the former police headquarters and Sydney Grammar that it all sort of stopped, and the police went and sort of got hold of Lance and confiscated the truck and got him out of the truck. And then it was clear that people didn't want to accept what was going on, and we decided no, this is just all a bit too much. And when someone, as I say, we were pretty buoyant, in a pretty fun mood at that time. But once we were thwarted by the police, we thought, no. And I remember thinking, what? You must be kidding. No, we don't have to take this lying down, and we will go up to the cross. And away we stormed up to the cross. I call it the running of the bulls. I do. It was just like that. It was a mass of people we were actually moving quite quickly up to the cross. Why, I don't know, but we were moving at some speed up there. We weren't just sort of ambling along anymore. And so we got up the top of William Street, and on our way up there, this is where I began to see police. I saw minivans, and they seemed to be full of police. You know, there would have been however many 18 can fit in a minivan. I don't know if you can fit 18 police in a minivan, but there were a number of police in each of these minivans being driven toward Darlinghurst Road. I thought, what's going on here? What's happening? And then I began to see a few paddy wagons, and I began to really, really wonder. I thought maybe they got something to do with us. But I didn't really know at the time for certain that this is what was going to happen. So by the time we got, and we, as I say, we fairly quickly moved up there, got down to El Alamein Fountain, and when we got to the fountain, that is when I realised there was about to be trouble, because there was lots of sirens, lots of lights from the police paddy wagons, which were big F100 trucks in those days, Ford 100 trucks. I don't know, you probably know the model. So they were there, and they'd come up from Macleay Street, they'd come up from the other side street, which I don't know the name of, and come straight down Darlinghurst Road. So the sirens were on, the lights were going, and by that stage there were lots and lots of people on the street, because people had come out of the other bars that were in Darlinghurst Road, and there were people on the street ready to deal with the police by this stage, because what had happened is when we got to El Alamein Fountain, we were given minimal time to disperse. We were told, you must disperse or otherwise we're going to arrest you. Okay, that order was given, and then they did not allow sufficient time for anyone to get out of the way before they decided they would swoop. And I think it was probably policy at the time. I do believe it actually. Police policy, and it wouldn't surprise me if it was, because in the 1970s, if you went to a demonstration, the chances of you getting arrested were reasonable, and particularly if the police knew you or didn't like you. Yeah, so anyway, we're up there, and it turned violent. As soon as we turned away from the fountain, turned our backs and started to try head out and go down Darlinghurst Road, that's when it became incredibly violent.
At the beginning of the parade, were there many police at all?
From memory, not a lot. However, I mean, it's very interesting, because I do know that police had been called to duty that night, and I wasn't aware of this until, you know, last week. I realised that police had been called in because I did know a few policemen, and I knew where they worked, and they weren't regular beat police. They were from other divisions.
Why do you think they brought them in?
Well, this is a good question, because maybe they knew something that we didn't know, or had planned that they were going to teach us a lesson. Maybe the government had decided that they didn't want us, the gay community, gay and lesbian community, stepping out of line at that particular time in their agenda. And that's why I can say that. Why I say that is because I do know where some of those police were from, and I would say now, why on earth were they there when you would normally think, okay, you've got Darlinghurst police, you've got, you know, probably some police down at Central, and police over at, there used to be a station down in Regent Street in Chippendale. So you would have thought they would have just brought them in. And when I realised that no, they'd come in from other places, there was some other agenda running.
Do you think they were looking for a fight that night, the police?
Well, it certainly felt like it. My goodness, it was on for young and old, and I certainly refused to step back from it. Once I started getting bashed, and I mean bashed, I decided no. And so I started, you know, giving as good as I could, because I wasn't going to accept it. But I wasn't a very large woman at that stage, and I was quite small, and these men were very, very large. They were, you know, 6'4", 18, 20 stone men, you know, huge men. And the other thing is, I knew it was on for young and old, because they had already removed, I knew there was trouble, because they'd already removed their identification, their number, which was their form of identification. In those days, they used to wear a number. and they'd taken that off. So there's absolutely no way that when they arrived there, they knew that they were going to be doing some damage.
So everybody had been surrounded?
As far as I could see, I could not see that there was a way of escape, unless you're just one person, you managed to scoot off down a side, down Macleay Street or down the other sort of side street. But otherwise, no, you were trapped. What happened? You were trapped. You were like you were in the sheep pen, and you're all going off to market, and there we were. We were actually, I use the expression, and I'll use that sheep pen. We were lambs to the slaughter, and that's exactly what happened. Some people say it was a riot. I have used that word before. To me, it seemed like a riot, but I have never in my life seen such violence. And also the noise of the night was just incredible. Really very, very loud. Lots of banging of the garbage bins, the steel bins that were there. I remember seeing that quite quickly in the piece. I saw that people were picking up the metal garbage bins, and they started flying around the street. And I thought, gee, this is a bit too dangerous for my liking. But when I actually saw someone I knew well and truly being grabbed and photographed, I thought, no, we don't want this happening. This woman might lose her job. Maybe she will, maybe she won't. But, if she taught at a private school, chances are that she might have lost her job.
Who was doing the photography, do you know?
No, I don't know.
Was it a police photographer or the press, or...?
At the time, I got absolutely no idea, and I wondered, they must have been on quick notice to get up there, because, here we were, down Oxford Street, dancing and singing along the street, and then suddenly we're over there being bashed. But I think they must have quick-footed it over to there. I don't know. I really don't know who was doing I can remember, a number, but I don't know how many media organisations were involved.
And to do the bashings, were the police using their batons or their fists as well?
Whatever they could use. And kicking. There's a lot of kicking going on. I mean, I later started wearing my steel tip boots to demonstrations. I thought, I'm not being kicked in the shins again, thank you very much, like this. And, the thumping and the punching, it was horrendous. I was black and blue.
Were they yelling homophobic abuse as well?
I didn't hear that. Some people say they were. I didn't hear that.
And you were bashed, as you say.
I was, yes. The reason I was bashed, look, I had bruises. This arm, that arm, and the marks were from here to here to my elbow, black and blue for 6 weeks. Black and blue right across my chest when they picked me up and threw me toward the paddy wagon. And of course, because it was just a total state of confusion that night, my chest actually hit the metal on the paddy wagon, and I think that's really what caused the bruising, as opposed to the police. I don't recall thumping me in the chest. The police had grabbed me by the arms and were trying to sort of cart me around and then just pick me up. I was a light little thing, and they went like this, and then my body actually hit the paddy wagon, because I tried to get my feet onto the ground and run away, but I couldn't.
At the time of you being beaten, were you in shock? Were you numb? Were you in pain?
No, I wasn't. I was probably in shock, but I was responding, and I was fighting back. I was not in pain at the time, but I was absolutely mortified that it was going on. And then, as I further say, and it happened that night, and it happened on Darlinghurst Road, when the sleeve was torn, the right sleeve was torn out of my leather jacket, totally hanging out, not just, it was right out. So that's how badly I had been malhandled on that night.
You were put into the paddy wagon.
Yeah.
What happened next?
Well, we were wondering what was going to happen next, and we were all, I think, without exception, terrified.
How many of you were in that paddy wagon?
how many do you fit in the sardine can? I
Male
don't know.
and female?
Well, that's interesting. I don't know. I can't answer that question. But I know we're sort of, there were a lot of us in there, jammed in. And they say waited till they had a load and then took us off. Then by the time we got up to Darlinghurst Police Station, then they separated us out. And I remember going into a cell and there were, 23 odd women there. And that was actually quite comforting. The old Darlinghurst Police Station was built sometime in the 19th century. And the walls were thick and it was freezing cold in there. By this stage it was, around midnight or thereabouts, and it was beginning to get quite cold. So we're all sitting on all us women were sitting on the floor in this cell. What a fun time we thought this, but it was good because the cell was quite small for 23 people. So we're sitting shoulder to shoulder, and that of itself was quite comforting. It was really quite nice to actually be up close and touching someone. And but what had happened, the police had thrown 2 blankets into that room and they had a tin of water, a tin or a bucket of water. There were no, jugs. Well, probably at the moment wondered what we're going to do if they gave us jugs of water. But there was just a tin of water there for us to drink. No toilet, nothing. Yeah.
Had fingerprints been taken or anything?
We were fingerprinted. And I mean, some of us didn't want to get fingerprinted, but also, I mean, it's a very scary situation, and you don't know if you turn up and say, "Look, don't you fingerprint me," what exactly is going to happen to you, So, as far as I could see, pretty much everyone would have been fingerprinted.
And what was the attitude of the police in the station?
We didn't have, they were really, really, really angry that night.
Did they talk down to you?
I think they were very patronising. Yes. We were rabble rousers, and they didn't want nonsense going on their turf, and quite understandably so. Why would they? If you've got 53 people that you've got to process that night and do the paperwork on them, you're not going to be happy.
What about food, or people who wanted to use the bathroom? I
don't know what happened about the bathroom, because all of us, my goodness, I mean, we couldn't do it now. It was interesting because I don't recall anyone asking to go to the toilet. Nor we were offered an opportunity. We weren't offered an opportunity. We were just there, and we were there for quite a long time, quite a number of hours. But the great thing was the support and the camaraderie that we felt from outside. So there was a whole lot of, I guess many, hundreds and hundreds of people had gone from up in Darlinghurst when they realised where we'd been taken to. They decided to come down and support and be outside and chant and sing.
Could you hear them?
Oh, very clearly, very clearly. But that was, honestly, sitting in there with the other women in the cell, as I said, was, quite fine. The thing is, we did not know what was happening. No one was telling us what was happening. And all we could do was hear this wonderful chanting going on from outside. So we weren't necessarily fearful. I wasn't anyway. I was just wondering what the hell is going to happen now? What's the process? And no one telling us what the process was. And obviously some people trying to raise bail, pass the bucket around or go and ring your friend, but of course no mobile phones and, depending upon landlines and the like.
How long were you incarcerated for?
Well, after a few hours, they decided they were, for whatever reason, and I don't know why, they took the women down to the central cells, what we call the central cells in those days. And then they put us in a room there. We were sitting on wooden racks on the floor with one bare light globe and no blankets, no water, nothing. Just there with the light on us, so we couldn't go to sleep. Besides, we're too scared because we didn't know what was going to happen next, And probably I don't know what time it was, maybe about 4 or so. It was getting towards sort of early morning. And then a few people started getting bailed out. But the issue was a number of people, and certainly women I know, had given the wrong names. They'd given a false name. So to get anyone out and not know who you're asking for, so people would know that their friend was no longer with them outside, so they must have been arrested. But to try and guess at the name was somewhat difficult. So yeah, it was a bit like a little sort of code and guess what the name might be, Yeah.
So your bail was paid by somebody?
Someone eventually paid my bail, and when I came out, I really don't know what time it was, but it was sort of half dark. It must have been winter, maybe 6:30 or that sort of time. And then it actually sort of took a while. It took a while to get everyone bailed out. The process was slow, and also this, as I say, this name problem was somewhat.
So you got bailed out.
Yeah.
What was the next process after that?
The next process after that was on the 26th of June, which was court, the day we were to go to court. And that of itself was an interesting day, because we sort of rocked up to the court to a wall of police standing right across, the steps at the central courts. And I actually knew very well one of those policemen. And he said, "Oh, hello, Sandy, how are you?" And I thought, lucky I gave my right name. Yeah, and they were just looking sort of really heavy. They were heavy-duty policemen on that day. And in terms of getting into the court, I didn't get inside that courtroom. I don't think anyone much got inside that courtroom on that day. But yeah, the cases were meant to be there. But that was also the day that our names had been put in the press, in the Sydney Morning Herald.
Was it just the names, or was it addresses, occupations?
Oh, the whole catastrophe. The whole catastrophe was there for everyone to see. Front page of the Sydney Morning Herald. Thank you very much. Yeah, and I had actually sort of forgotten all about that. But I mean, for me, as I say, I was fine. I was doing something at uni at the time, so I wasn't too concerned about that, and my accommodation was secure, so that didn't worry me either. But I do believe that some people were subjected to dismissal, and also in terms of housing, losing housing. Now, how many people that were involved in that, where that actually happened, I don't know, but that is what we understand to be the case.
Were you in touch with your own family at this point?
In touch? Yes, I was aware of my own family, and it was not a happy situation. My brother was really quite affronted. He didn't like my red politics, and he was quite accusatory. And he actually said to me, if anything should happen to my mother, in other words, this news may in fact kill her, or it'd be on your head. And I thought, what? Because I was just beyond flabbergasted. And I thought, where is this coming from? We weren't brought up like this, so why is it coming out now? But there was absolute hatred and venom. And my father was fine, and my mother was sort of somewhat uncomfortable about it all. And so I was probably quite estranged from them for maybe 2 years, 2, 3, about 2 years, I think. Yeah, but I mean, they knew before then, so it wasn't like it was news, because I'd been open and had relationships with women from way back in the early 70s, so it wasn't sort of news.
Were the charges against you dropped?
Yeah, they eventually were dropped. I mean, it went on for a while. I never actually went to court. I was just eventually told that the charges were dropped, and I thought, because we did a lot of action, because I was involved in Gay Solidarity Group, and we did a lot of action about dropping the charges. So, as far as I was concerned, the charges would be dropped.
Were you relieved?
Yes, of course, because, you know, I mean, obviously it would influence my career, which I was, I was wanting to have a career. I wasn't wanting to live a life of poverty or, you know,
Were all the charges against everybody dropped? I know Peter Murphy's went further.
His was different. And as I say, I mean, to this day, why was Peter, I think the question, and I can't answer that question because I don't know, but it raises a number of questions to me. Why was he singled out? Why was he taken aside and bashed? I mean, he was only a small man, but that wouldn't be the reason. He had been a member of the Communist Party. You know, did they know that? Yes, they would have known that. But at the time when that when that riot broke out up in Darlinghurst, they wouldn't have had time to sort of work out exactly where he was unless someone was following him. So we don't know why. I mean, I actually sort of asked him, I said, well, why do you think this happened to you? You know, and he really didn't have an explanation for that. But I thought the only reason would be because back in those days we used to have ASIO floating around and wandering about, and so they all knew you and they'd say hello, they'd say hello to you by name. As probably some other people can attest to that you may have interviewed. So we weren't pals, but we knew each other. Yes, and we knew who to look out for. Yeah.
All these years later, almost 40, how do you reflect back on it?
It's been very interesting. The last week or so has been a very, very interesting time because it's brought back into very sort of close. I guess I've been thinking about the period. I've been thinking about the whole sort of 70s period, thinking about the politics of it, thinking about, you know, what I was doing and why I was doing what I was doing. The day of the actual apology was emotional. I woke up that morning, I woke up on the 25th of February feeling quite anxious in the stomach and wondering why I felt like that. And then by the time I got to Parliament House and was sitting in the Legislative Assembly, while they were going through the speech and while the apology was actually being given by Bruce Notley-Smith, my stomach was churning again. And I thought, gee, you really haven't dealt with you haven't dealt too much with this or too well with this. So it was like it was very, very close to the surface all over again. And for other people too, I think it was likewise because people were saying, oh, it's just brought it all back so vividly. It was like I could live the night all over again. I could see it and I go, oh my God, you know.
Do you feel the apology was sincere? Was it what you were hoping for?
Look, I'd said to people, the apology, you need to take this apology now. We're getting older. If we don't take it now, you can wait till you're 100. And in terms of, you know, crossing the T's and dotting the I's and getting it perfectly politically correct, you might wait till you're 100. But you might be dead before then. And to me, the idea was, yes, we'd worked on getting this apology. Was it exactly what I wanted? No, it wasn't exactly what I wanted. But I was prepared to take it because I thought, yes. And when I saw those parliamentarians, more particularly the parliamentarians from the non-Liberal side, in other words, where there were actually a group of politicians sitting in Parliament House that day, sitting on the Labor side and the Greens, and when they were sitting there, I thought these people were speaking, many of them, from their heart. They weren't necessarily reading speeches, so they were making impromptu statements of apology. And to me, I thought, these people sound genuine. They mean it. I'm happy to take their apology. But also quite cynical about, yeah, well, okay, if you've got that many people in your electorate that are expecting this, of course you've got to go and do it. But it wasn't just reading a format from a page. It was coming from somewhere else within them.
What exactly did you want?
what did I want? Well, I would have liked a police apology because, to me, yeah, I mean, I'd totally been abused by them, and that would have been the right and correct solution. Also, it should have come from the Premier. I was really very annoyed. I knew Bruce Notley-Smith. I mean, I knew what was going to be happening. But I thought that the Premier at least should have been there. There should have been Liberal Party people sitting on that bench, backing up Bruce Notley-Smith just as a colleague. They may not have believed it. They may not have wanted to stand up and address us at all. However, they should have been there supporting him as their Liberal colleague. And they didn't. And that looked so bizarre because all the coverage shows poor old Bruce, most of the time, sitting there, you know, as an isolated individual with no support. Well, we knew this wasn't the case because, I mean, that apology, the good thing about that apology was it was a cross-party apology. And I think that was a very smart, wise, sophisticated move. Because at first, when I started hearing, oh yeah, let's have this apology, I thought, oh yeah, sure, this will get up. And then even on Fair Day, when Bruce Notley-Smith actually stood up at Fair Day and announced that an apology was going to be, you know, coming forward on the 25th of February, I thought, well, why are you saying this? There's a few days that someone can intervene and sink this. I wouldn't be using this strategy. But anyway, I mean, it all happened. And I think for Bruce, it was an absolute sort of victory for him to be able to actually get it up, have the Premier agree to it, because the Premier, I mean, Baird is you know, sort of right-wing Christian man too, you know. So I mean, you know, they're not doing us any favours. But I think the Premier actually should have been there, stayed in the room for the duration. Whether he said anything or not, but his presence would have indicated some support for it. And I know there were informal sort of chats later with the Premier about an apology by the police. And I think there will be an apology by the police. And I think that will happen on the 5th of March.
What about the Fairfax apology?
Well, okay, that's another story. As I say, that I was shocked for other people, but as far as myself, I just thought, oh, so what? You know, this is just another way that, you know, the state chooses to operate, and they're in it's with the media. You know, they're always aligned. And at that time, the media was not on the side of gay people at all. Very different story to now, where, you know, there's quite a lot of you know, positive press. Back then it wasn't, so it didn't surprise me. However, did I need an apology from the editor-in-chief or the board, face to face? I don't feel that I need that, but I'll go along on the occasion that it's been offered. We're just sorting out when it's going to happen now. You know, what the venue's going to be and the date. So it needs to be soon, sometime in March.
When you're marching or parading,
parading and then fighting.
But when you're there every year, or when you go with that
I haven't been every year. Oh, no.
But when you do go, and you're with the 78er bus, as there is now,
I will be with the 78er bus. I have not been near that place. I have not been near that because I thought they were a total sellout.
Really?
Politically. Ever since it, probably 79, 80, 81, you know, it was still sort of reasonably political. And then I just thought, total sellout.
Mardi Gras, rather than the 78ers. Mardi Gras.
Yeah. I just sort of thought, oh, well, you know, this is commercialisation. I don't agree with the turn that this has taken. But, you know, I mean, there was a lot of fighting going on between, you know, the political activists and the commercial groups. So it didn't surprise me that when that happened, I thought, I don't need to be here anymore.
So you haven't been in the parade When you
actually, no, look, I do lie because I think it was the 30th anniversary. I was told that we'd be marching out the front, and I thought, yeah, it's a long time now. I can forgive some of these people for their bad politics. I think I'll go and have a little march, and I did that then. But really, that was the only time, and this will be my return. This 2016 will, in the red bus, the double-decker red bus, will be my return to the Mardi Gras.
What do you think will be going through your mind as the crowd cheer you on?
I'll be elated. I will be elated. I know this. I've been in, huge marches in New York, gay pride marches, 1 million people marching through the street in New York. And the cheering and the elation and the joy that I experienced from that, I thought, this is what I expect, that I'll feel totally over the top. It'll be like some wonderful drug, and I'll be floating along and enjoying myself. And that's the issue. I'm planning on enjoying myself. I'm not going to the party afterwards. Oh God, it's too much.
And just going back for almost 40 years, briefly, there was a limited gay press back then.
Yeah.
But how did it react to that first Mardi Gras? Was it supportive of those people arrested, or critical, or indifferent?
Ooh, well, as I say, there was Campaign was the gay press at that particular time. The Star Observer hadn't yet started. It was about to start quite soon after that, but I don't believe that was operating at the time of the Mardi Gras. I cannot be totally 100% certain about that.
How do you feel?
And because the politics of Campaign were fairly much supporting the commercial interests, yes, they weren't too interested in the people that were political activists.
How do you feel about the police marching every year in the parade?
On one level, I think it's good. I think that the police that are out there, that's acknowledging that there are gay police, diversity within their workforce, and that it's endorsed and supported. However, I really still would wonder, how they are treated in real life, back in the workplace, what it means to those. If you're out in a country area and you're a gay policeman or woman, how you're actually sort of treated, I don't know. I just don't know the situation. I think the same for the teachers, the nurses and the ambulance officers. All of those people now get a good run at Mardi Gras. But for the police, and people sort of cheer them on, so obviously people are seeing that as very important, that they're there. But I still wonder what it's like in their actual workplace, unless they're in the inner city, and that's probably a totally different story. But if they are in the outer suburbs, I think they'd probably still get a hard time. And I think people generally probably do get a hard time. And I believe that an apology is not the be-all and end-all, because there's still a lot of work, and all this has done is just, it just had my brain flooded with ideas about things that can be done into the future. And what this has actually done, nobody knows, but I think that period now is going to be about reactivating a lot of interest in a lot of other issues. Those issues about the safe schools, the issues about the youth suicide, but also the issues about the gay bashings, the deaths. Also, I think other issues are going to come to the fore, because particularly amongst the 70s, because people are getting older, about ageing. So those issues are going to sort of come up, and people are going to be taking quite a bit of interest in them, I think. And that is fantastic. I think to myself, wow, it's only taken this long to stir the pot and get everyone going again. But This is what this has done. This last week was that was amazing, because all those people came out of the woodwork. They actually came down to the Parliament House, and they were very, very interested in being involved. And I think if there was a campaign running that day, we could have got everyone signed up, and we could have gone to bigger and better. What I don't know, but on that day they were so highly motivated to be involved. The energy was fabulous.
Couple more questions. How would you improve the Mardi Gras parade?
Well, it's a bit difficult for me to comment on that. How do I improve the Mardi Gras parade? Because, as I say, I haven't been there. So I can't comment. But what I can say, what I found was the really good things about Mardi Gras was the political sort of comment that turned into stylised and some of the stuff that Fabian and other people had been involved with was just very, very clever. And I think people's involved in Mardi Gras, it's all very well to have, costumes and floats, but you still need to be making very strong political statements. You don't have to be doing it with banners. You can be doing the cleverness and the message of your float. And as I say, it doesn't have to be a great big banner. There are other ways of doing it.
One of the messages in the 70s was about liberation. Often what we hear now is about equality, such as marriage equality. Does liberation and equality go hand in hand, or is it a contradiction?
Liberation, freedom, liberation, equality, I think they are different terms, actually. I think they are. And, I mean, for most of us who are 78, who are 78ers, not were, we, I'd say, in the majority, and not necessarily, sure, there needs to be equality, but that implies really equality within the structure of the time, and I don't think we're necessarily like that, because we actually wanted something outside of that. We wanted we didn't want that structure imposed on us. And so therefore, the younger people that are on about marriage equality get quite annoyed with us when they don't think we're supporting them. And I can say, well, they're on about a different thing. They're wanting conformity, acknowledgement by the family, by the state about what they're wanting with their gay marriage. But for us, that wasn't the issue at all. I'm not sort of talking about free love, but we wanted to be totally free, to be outside of those known structures. Well, how you get outside of that, I don't know, because we're all forced to conform at some point in time. And I think if you're a person that's gay, lesbian, all the other GLBTI, if you're any of those people, you are living outside of society's norms, and you will continue to live outside those. You may get equality, but you will still be living outside that. And to me, that's fine. I don't mind that. I don't have to be rubber stamped and said, I'm okay, you're one of us, you're one of the straights. I don't need that. I don't want it.
And my final question is, what advice do you have for the young activists of today?
There's so much to go for. You need to keep on being motivated. You need to keep to the fore. You need to be drawing in people into your particular cause. And I think also getting hold of some of people from the past to draw in and to be there to support you. By the young people that are activists, I'm really quite taken, because what I saw and what I didn't know even 6 months ago, well, 9 months ago, what I didn't know was the degree of interest the young people have in the history of the gay movement in Australia. And I was absolutely flabbergasted, and I thought, I'm happy to go along and talk at any event, because these people actually want to know. They're so damned interested, and if I can assist them in having some better understanding, I will be there every time to do that, because I'm so encouraged by the new generation of activists. They're a very different breed again to, you know, the way we were. But I mean, most of them have come out of the unis like most of us did too. But I think they are very different, and they've got different skill sets. So their campaigns will be different types of campaigns to the one we were running.
Sandy, thank you very much.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you, William.